it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm designing a layout for Papermaze. And this month I'm working with the beautiful ARToptions Viken collection from 49er Market. Gorgeous collection full of kind of purples and greens with a hint of blue. I saw this as like a sneak on their Instagram or Facebook page a while back, so I've purposely saved all of my bluebell photos for this collection because I think it will work perfectly with all of my photos. So that's what I'm going to use today, one of my photos of my little boy in amongst the bluebells in the woods. I've cut some kind of like scalloped circles on my silhouette cameo before hitting record on this video. So I've cut the circle with the scallop as like a whole black piece. Then I've also cut the circles on their own, the inner circle, without the scalloped edge, if that makes sense. But that's because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. So I thought, rather than waste pattern paper, I'll have a play with just a piece of white A4 card and see what I want to do. So I ended up cutting both. And I quite liked the look of the scalloped edge and the circle being separate. But the scallop edge on its own was quite flimsy when I cut that. So what I've decided to do is use some of the patterned papers to cut the circle for the centre, and then I'm going to leave the scalloped edge underneath white, just for a bit of contrast. And I think the white looks really pretty with this collection, kind of gives it almost like a lacy feel. So I'm just going to take some time, and I think I use 3 of the pattern papers in total for this, and I'm just using that circle template to sort of as a template, with a pencil, and then I'm cutting it out by hand. I could have booted my cameo back up, but I'd already closed down Silhouette Studio, so I'd have had to have started again because I would never have got my circles at the same size again. So I thought it was just easier to do it by hand. And I'm using some of the papers that have got both kind of purples and greens and florals in, so subtle patterns. So the first one I've picked out, so the patterned paper just above my photo there, you can see, that's called Enchanted Fields, and it's a lovely floral. Then the one to the right underneath my photo is also floral. That one's called Floral Notes, but it's got more kind of bold colours in it and larger florals. And then I decided I wanted some more solid patterns or solid colours as well. So I'm using here the B side of Enchanted Fields, that lovely green, and I've also used the B side of a paper called Endearing for the purple. You can just see it at the top of the screen there. I will pull my layout back down in a minute. I just pushed it out of the way to sort of cut all of these out. And then I'm coming back in for the last 2 circles. I think I use the Floral Notes again for those ones. So I've got my circles all laid out here, as you can see. I'm just going to have a play now with the composition, trying to see where I want them. And I know I want to offset my design slightly to the right because I've got my eye on a couple of kind of lacy trim laser cut elements from the, funnily enough, laser cut elements pack, and I want to have those over on the left hand side, so you'll see me bring those in a bit. So I'm just having a play here. I've already pulled out some bits that I thought would look nice, some smaller elements from the laser cut elements and the ephemera die cut pieces. So I knew I wanted the patterns on the circles to show, so I didn't want to cover those up with large embellishments. So I've pulled out some small bits here that I thought would work, and I'm now just having a go at placing them where I want them to be. I do move a couple of bits around, but generally it's just a case of tucking things in. So I've pulled out 2 large floral die cuts from the laser cut elements pack, and I've popped those underneath my photo as kind of layers to start off my clusters, and then I've worked around those with smaller pieces. Now I do try these 2 circular bits as well, but I just decide they just cover up too much of the patterned paper circles, so they get heave-ho and get taken back off. But I'm working on the cluster over on the left as well now, so you can see these laser cut sort of lace trims I was talking about. You get 3 of them in the pack. You get the purple and green I've got on the page, and then you get a darker purple one you can just see over to the left on my desk there. And I'm going to have those hanging off the edge of the page. They're not quite cut straight, so I have to have them hanging off the page so that I can trim them in line with the edge of my layout. But I've brought in a couple of stamps over on the right, and there are larger stamps as well, so I'm going to bring in one on the left with a couple of little floral pieces, and obviously butterflies. I find I can use butterflies on any layout. They make the perfect little embellishment. So I'm really pleased to see some butterflies in this collection. So I've used, I think, 3 or 4 on this page already. Now I'm just going through, this is the mix and match die cut pieces, so what we'd call an ephemera pack. Just going through, pulling a few bits out of here as well. I've pulled out memorable for my title, also a couple of like ticket stubs. So I've folded those in half to bring in a little bit of dimension, and I've got a green one at the top of the page and a purple one at the bottom. And I will eventually probably stitch through the centre of those with my sewing machine. It's just not set up at the moment. I've put it away. I had a bit of a tidy of my craft room, so I will get that out and probably stitch through the centre of those to make sure that they hold in place. You would have seen just a second ago I brought my iPad in and I took a photo of my layout. I'd put so much on the page and was really happy with how it looks. And you know what it's like when you have to take everything off to stick it back down or add mixed media. You never get it back in the right place. So I've used my iPad just to take a quick snap of my layout, and then I can work from that when it comes to sticking things down in a minute. And I really couldn't decide on my pattern paper circles whether I wanted to leave them with a nice crisp clean edge or whether I wanted to distress them to bring in a bit of texture. Now ordinarily I would distress everything. I absolutely love distressed edges and the texture and dimension it gives, and just the interest really. But lately I've been going kind of off-piste with my usual style and leaving edges like clean and crisp and untouched, and I've really liked it. So now I find myself every layout debating whether I want to distress edges or not. But I've decided for this layout that I do want the texture to come in. So I am distressing them only lightly, just that edges of the circles. I'm not going to do the scallops or the lace trim or anything like that. I'm just doing the edges of the circles. And I've got a little tool here that helps me to distress my edges. It's kind of got little sections with blades in. If you don't have one of these, you can easily grab them online, but the edge of the blade of scissors works just as well. Just scrape the edge of your scissor blade around or down your edge, and it will give exactly the same effect. The only thing I do find is I tend to tear the papers a little bit more when I use scissors. However, the patterned papers in this collection are really good quality. They are so thick that I think you'd be hard pressed to rip them because they are very good quality. But yeah, if you haven't got an edge distressing tool, scissors work just as well. And you saw me there just having a play with some inks, trying to decide on what colours to use for some mixed media. Normally when I get a new collection, I have a little play with my inks, just done a bit of scrap paper, but I hadn't had a chance to do that yet. This collection literally arrived at lunchtime on the day I made this layout. Literally within 3 hours I was sat at my desk with it creating, so I hadn't had a chance to go through my inks. So I pulled out a few distress inks and distress oxides, and in the end I settled on the Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide and the Dusty Concord Distress Ink, just to add a little bit of mixed media. And I've used a stamp set by Tim Holtz. I'll put the name of them in the description box. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I've used a couple of those, and I've just added some ink to the edges, like one edge of them, and used my fingers rather than an acrylic block just to add some stamped detail around the edge of where those pattern paper circles are going to go. And then I do come back in at the end with some stamping and splatters as well. So my mixed media is not quite finished yet, but I'm at a point where there's enough on the page that I can get my circles stuck in place. And I did draw around a pencil very roughly with them before, so I knew where to stick that mixed media. And now I'm just going to go through the process of getting everything stuck back down. So I'm starting with that cluster over on the left. I stuck the green lace trim down flat, but I've raised the purple one up on foam dots just for a bit of dimension. And then I'm adding the little embellishments on as well, and I've used foam pads for those. And then that's in place, so I can move over to the right hand side and get everything stuck in place. And I am working from that photo I took on my iPad for this. I would never have remembered all those little things that I'd tucked in place. So I'm using my iPad and my photo, and I'm sticking some of these circles down flat. So the outer ones are going down flat, so those two tiny ones, top and bottom. Then the rest of them, I'm going to stick the bit that's going under my photo flat, but the outer edge I'm going to raise up on foam for a bit more dimension. I want the ones that are under my photo flat because I will raise my photo up on foam. And if the circles are on foam underneath the photo, I then have to add 2 layers of foam behind my photo. to try and bring it up level so it doesn't sink in the middle. So underneath my photo, I'm just trying to stick those down flat. Saw my little boy come in there with his lint roller. He's trying to remove cat hair from something, bless him, and asked me to peel a layer off. So that's why there was a random lint roller in the middle of my screen for a second. And I'm just getting these florals stuck in place now. Again, foam pads for those. I'm actually going to use craft foam for those. It's just a bit easier as it's a bit bigger. And I'm just sticking it around the outer edge again so that the bit that's under my photo isn't so raised up. But it's pretty much the same process repeated here. I am just sticking things down with either wet glue or foam pads. So I probably will skip through most of this process. It is quite tedious to watch me sticking, and you saw me place it all at the beginning anyway, so I probably will skip through the rest of this for you. So there we go, as if by magic, pretty much everything is stuck in place now, just doing the last bits. And then I'm going to turn the page over and just trim the edge of that lace trim off so that it's sort of a straight edge and will fit in my album eventually when I get around to it. I'm terrible at filing layouts. I've got about 300 that need to go in albums that I just haven't done yet. I'll get to it at some point, I promise. But for now, I've just realised there's a couple of areas where I've extended my circles out and covered my mixed media. So just coming in and adding a bit more stamping. Then I'm going to finish the layout off with a scripty stamp. This is by Kaisercraft, and I've got a black Stays On ink. And I'm adding some detail to that purple and green, the circles from pattern paper. They were looking a little bit boring with all the other patterns going on, so I've added some script to those. And then I thought, why not add some script all around the edge of my design? So I'm just using a tiny corner of that stamp just to add a little bit of detail, nothing major. And then I'm coming in with those two Distress inks and Oxides again and adding just a few splatters around the outside edge to finish that off. So that's Mowed Lawn and Dusty Concord again, and I'm just applying the ink to packaging, adding a little bit of water with my brush, and then just working my way around, making some splatters, being careful to try and cover my photo where I can. And that is me finished for today. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you love this collection as much as I did. I think it's absolutely stunning. And there's not as much in this collection as there was in Spectrum Sherbet, so you don't need to rob a bank to be able to buy it all. I spent a fortune on Spectrum Sherbet. We probably shouldn't even talk about that. But yeah, there's not quite as much in this collection, so it's much more affordable. And I think it works stunning for bluebell photos, and it was that time of year recently, so if you've got loads of bluebell photos to scrap, this collection is perfect. And I'll pop a link in the description box below to the Papermaze store and this collection, and I'll also pop in the name of those stamps by Tim Holtz that I've used because I couldn't remember the name of them. But thanks very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed. I'll leave you with the rest of the close-ups, and I'll see you next time.